So, as I suggested before, a good miracle would be gunpowder. And he said he made blasting powder, which is probably a similar sort of thing where it's an oxidizer and a fuel, and you mix it together, maybe with something to sensitize it. And a simple one could be made out of charcoal, sodium nitrate, or potassium nitrate, and sulfur. And the sulfur is mostly there to make it more sensitive and to lower the uh, ignition energy. But they didn't go into the recipe of it. I kind of hoped that they would because that's kind of cool. And, I'm a big engineering fan. So, anyway, he went and he blew up Merlin's tower and he set it up with a lightning rod. He said, okay, I'm going to blow it up 2 weeks. So he had the 2 weeks to make a whole bunch of gunpowder, make a lightning rod. Now, lightning rod's a big piece of metal, and you stick it up high, and that draws in the lightning. Talked about this during Moby Dick. And so the lightning rod draws the lightning. But instead of putting it into the ground, or like in Moby Dick on the Pequod, they ran a line into the water, he ran the line into the gunpowder. So what happens is electricity comes down, hits the gunpowder, and the energy from the lightning bolt sets the gunpowder on fire and it explodes. Brilliant idea. And he says, okay, I'm going to blow it up in 2 weeks. He spends a week getting ready, and then he throws up the lightning rod and he says, sometime in the next 24 hours, I'm going to blow up the tower. And people start gathering. And he didn't know when the storm was going to come, but the storms, he said, were fairly regular, and England does get a lot of rain. That kind of reminds me, though, of when Eulalie and I were down at Philmont, and we were down at the Philmont Training Center, and we were giving training. Now, Philmont is in New Mexico. It's a big Boy Scout ranch. Your dad hiked there with a bunch of scouts. Hiked there with a bunch of scouts. Eulalie and I gave training, and she also took training there. But anyway, at Philmont, it's in New Mexico, and during the time of year when we were there, it rained every day. It was like 3 o'clock. All of a sudden, storm clouds rolled in. It rained. It rained for 45 minutes, half an hour, and then stopped. And then the sun came out and everything dried. And it was every day. It was regular for like the entire week. It was like all of a sudden rain, all of a sudden nothing. And so, he ran a bet that, okay, it would rain. And he lucked out. Towards the end of the day, it started raining. And just as it was starting to get fired up, he called out Merlin. He said, okay, I am going to destroy your tower. Go at it. Do your best to stop me. And the lightning was starting up, and the rain was starting, and just as the lightning was getting close to the tower, he's like, okay, you've had enough time. I am going to destroy it now. And then it's like, lightning, boom! So that was kind of cool. Now, the word chromo, I was like, what's a chromo? What's a chromo? And that was something that I had to look up. And when I tried looking up chromo in the internet, it was like, oh, you mean Chrome. Here, download Chrome. It's like, I don't want Google Chrome. I want to know what a chromo is. Well, it is short for chromolithograph. Chromo, the root meaning color. Litho meaning stone. Graph meaning writing. So you have colored stone writing. Now, lithography is making prints. Now, before it was done with stone, where you would etch on the stone, you'd ink the stone, and you'd apply it to paper or whatever. But nowadays they use other things. In art class, I used tiles. Tiles. Floor tiles. What's the word that I'm going for? It's this sort of rubbery thing, and I'm going to remember the word right away. But anyway, so it's this sort of rubber substance, and you cut into the surface, and so any place you cut doesn't take ink, and every place you leave raised takes ink. So you can make lines and fine lines, and it takes. But anyway, back in the day, this was done with stones. It's not vinyl. I'll come back to it. Anyway, but chromolithography is where you do it with multiple colors. So you start out and you do one of red, and you put down the red. You do one of orange, and you put down the orange. You do one of yellow, and you put down the yellow. And you do blue, and you put down the blue. And you have to get them all lined up just right, because if they aren't lined up just right, you kind of get these ghosts. And there's ways to make sure that you line it up just right. Your Lolly does stamps and does scrapbooking. And part of the scrapbooking thing is they have these stamps where you take the stamp and you apply the stamp in the ink, and then you can apply it to the scrapbook page. And so it gives a nice clear image. Now, as I said, your Lolly has some really cool things with these. And one of them is a thing where it folds over and presses. And her stamps are actually a transparent silicone. So what happens is she can take the stamp of one color, stamp it down into place, lift the thing up, and it's all on a hinge, this nice hinge thing, and take off the stamp of one color and put on the stamp of the other color. And when she lowers down the stamp of the other color before she inks it, she can see exactly how it lands and sees what it's going to fill in. So she can put it in place, verify that it's correct, lift it up, ink it, and then close it down and get a nice stamp. Now, there's different colors that you can use. There's different ways of doing colors. One thing is called a spot color. Now, spot colors are great when you have a particular color that you want to reproduce. Let's say you have a really great blue that you want to use. Oh, your Lolly is bringing over the thing. This is the thing, and it lifts up. She attaches the stamps to here, looks, make sure it aligns. These are little magnetic things to make sure that it aligns right. And then she can lift it up, ink it, and put it back down. And then she can take it off, put on a fresh one, and take it, and put it, oh. She's giving me a stamp. So she can take the stamp like that and fold it into the piece of paper and see that it lines up right here where it should. And then take it, open it up, ink it, close it up, and that goes right into the same spot. Now, as I said, there's different ways of doing colors. One thing is called a spot color. So if you have a color that you really like a special pink, or companies, they have their own particular colors, like Adobe has a red, that this is Adobe red, or McDonald's, this is the McDonald's red and the McDonald's yellow. If you have particular colors that must be exact, you do something called a spot color. You can also do a spot color if you only are doing like one or two colors. So you you do a lot of black, because black is easy and black is great for lines and such. So if you do black and then you do a spot color or two spot colors, you can get a lot of information out with only two spot colors. If you want to go more colors, if you want to do something that's fancy and looks like real life, then you do something called the four color process. So the four colors are CMYK, short for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Now, you're like, why K for black? Because if you do B, B is blue. But blue doesn't have a K, and so K is black. So you have the CMYK. And those four colors in pigments can give you a whole broad range of colors, almost as much as you can get with the red, green, and blue that make up a television screen. And in some ways, you can get more colors that you can't see on a TV screen or on your phone, because you have the ability to do something called a warm black or a cool black. which is completely black with a little bit of magenta in it, which is a warm black. Because you look at it, it's black, but at the same time, it has this sort of warmness to it. And it's more that you would get than even if you did like 1% red. It's blacker than that, but it's at the same time it has this sort of warm feel. And then there's a cool black, which is you mix in cyan. And yellow ink is something that most people don't notice, but you really need it to get all the colors and display the colors right. And here's a little secret. Printers. So when you have color printers print a pattern in yellow ink on paper. And this is to track counterfeiting, to track people writing up extortion notes or whatever. And the pattern that's printed in yellow is custom to each printer. So my printer prints one pattern of yellow. The printers at work, or each printer at work, prints a different pattern of yellow. And because it's yellow on white, you don't really notice it unless it's in the middle of other colors. And this has been going on for years and it's been hidden. I know this sounds like a horrible conspiracy theory, but yeah, it's true. They print this yellow pattern and the yellow pattern says, oh, this is this printer. Which is kind of cool and kind of nefarious, but you can look at, if you know what you're looking for. And I honestly don't know what to look for beyond knowing that it's there. But if you know what you look for, you can take a look at a printout and say, oh, this came from this printer. So that's kind of cool. So anyway, the chromos are chromolithographs, where they take different colors and they print the images. And this was a big thing back in the 1800s. And so here we have, this was a big thing back in the day because they finally had mass-made paper. They had the ability to make long runs of pictures, so they could set these things up and make these printings. And that was about the first time that became actually a viable thing to do, where you made these mass market color prints. So that's kind of cool. And one other thing, he referred to Merlin as Brer Merlin, just like Brer Rabbit, Brer Fox, and Brer Bear, all the way back in the Song of the South. So if you're to go back and reference my Song of the South Brer Rabbit video, he's calling Merlin Brer Merlin, kind of making fun of him. Oh, he's like Brer Bear and Brer Fox. He's not entirely smart and not entirely with it. So that was a kind of cool thing for him to say, because once again, the Brer Rabbit story was really, really old and was popular about that time. So when Mark Twain said Brer Merlin, everybody knew. It's like, oh, just like that moron Brer Bear. So that's that. So it was bugging me what the floor stuff was, because it was like, I remember doing this in elementary school and being there with the sharp tools and cutting and carving on the rubbery stuff. And I remember that it was the name for floor stuff. And I was like, this is killing me. So I went and I searched on Bing and I was like, okay, rubber floor tile substance. And I found linoleum. So linoleum is what it was. We had these linoleum sheets. They had a burlap backing, and we would cut and carve them. And it's like, be very careful, because, here we were 10, 11 years old, and we had sharp tools. But anyway, so what we would do is we would carve linoleum and make little cuts in it and cut it down so that, it made essentially wood block prints, which is what they used before they had other substances to carve. But linoleum was great because it had this nice flat surface, because it's made from dried linseed oil. So you take the linseed oil, you spread it out, and it oxidizes, polymerizes, and dries. And it's still flexible. So anyway, linoleum is what we did the crafts of when we carved and did prints. And I can't remember what I did my print of, but it was fun.